So good evening. So we start off as usual with our prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily fight with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I think the subject matter this evening is opening the heart. And I think we have to have quite a few explanations about what we mean by heart, what we mean by opening. But today we're living in a very, very difficult era in this particular century. It reminds us tragically of the last century, where by this time, 2022, there had already been a great war, world war. And in the next, several dozens of years, there would be another war just like it, where millions and millions of people lose their lives. And it's not like the old days of warfare. In the old days, ancient days, in the Mahabharata, for example, it was more like a chess game. In fact, the game of chess is derived from the ancient code of ethics of warfare, the rules of war. Even today, there are rules of war, but it seems not many people pay attention to it. In the ancient days, armies assembled, and they were not permitted to fight between dawn and between dawn and dusk was the only time they could fight. In between, at night, they couldn't fight. They could send spies across the other camp, that much. And only military people were involved. Of course, the people who suffered from their deaths would have been family and friends and so on. But the actual military people, it was military versus military. And in the Middle East, we must have seen the same kind of thing, because rather than shed even the military, the best of two armies were brought forward, and they had a small contest, something like a boxing match or a wrestling match, and the winner would be the overall winner. The whole army would have laid their arms down and submitted. So we have the story, biblical story of David and Goliath. And apart from the lesson in life about it, the lesson in life really is the small shepherd boy, fairly insignificant because no other person would take the role of combatant against the great giant Goliath. Goliath, a great, great warrior, so enormous, he could single-handedly defeat any enemy. And so Goliath was the best of the army, and he came out, and nobody was prepared to face him except this volunteer. No, I'll do it. That means it's a lesson in faith for us. We are reminded of Nachiketa and the Kathopanishad, saying, I will do it, I'll face it, I'll face death if need be. Won't you have a shield? Won't you have a sword? Won't you have a spear? No, no, no. I just need a slingshot and a stone. And of course, that was a weapon of the day, a very powerful weapon if you know how to handle it. Just using what is available, a stone, a slingshot, and carefully whirling it around your head, you dispatch it using the centrifugal force, and the stone leaves the weapon, and in this case, it landed directly in between the eyebrows. Adnan Chakra, we might say, destroying all his knowledge and awareness and falling down like a stone. And David's army was victorious. So we may think that we are small, but we have enormous power within us. I always remember sitting with London devotees, and we were talking about spiritual life. Oh, it's all right for you Swamis, you know, you're extraordinary. What about us ordinary people? I said, no, you're all extraordinary. Everyone is extraordinary. Don't think that you're ever ordinary, because you have unlimited possibilities and potential within you. This is the Vedantic approach. Unlimited possibilities, infinite possibilities are within you. They just need to be uncoiled, unfolded. Unfolding it, uncoiling it in one jump is very rare and probably not a good idea, because the suddenness that we can see will suddenly disappear also. It's much better to take progressive steps, like climbing a mountain or a ladder, one step at a time. Find out what is your one step. When we climb up a mountain, we have to determine, first of all, what will our first step be, and are we fit to make our first step happen? The Bhagavatam, last chapter, the 11th chapter, I should say, of the Bhagavatam, where Lord Krishna has a dialogue with Uddhava, he tells us very clearly that there is some approach on our ladder for everybody, something that suits everybody, and there's a ranking order, apparently, with a view to affecting the liberation of man. I, that is the Lord, that is Sri Krishna, have inculcated 3 yogas or methods. Now we understand this, of course. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's laid out very clearly. In fact, 4 methods are laid out, but one method is common to everybody. The 3 methods are normally delineated for those who want to work, for those who are active in nature, those people who want to earn a living, those people who want to take their energy and see if they can make some impact for themselves and on the world in front. This activity, generally called karma, from the root kr, to act, to do. And then there are those people who have a different kind of nature, those people who have a capacity to think. And in their thinking, they've decided that work is tainted. There's no point in doing any work. Doesn't mean to say you should be lazy, but it means you have to take up a serious pursuit. You have to put aside a job, career, activities where you make money. In other words, you have to give up the rewards of all your activities, understanding that action is tainted, and go according to a process of detachment or discernment. Naturally, you have gotten tired of work with its various stress, very relevant today. One great complaint everybody has, oh, can you give me a dose of happiness, as if it comes in a bottle? Or can you relieve my stress, as if the DHL will deliver it tomorrow? Some kind of recipe, some kind of magic formula. When do you want it? Tomorrow? No, yesterday. I'm so impatient. Then, of course, there are those who operate from the heart. More or less everybody operates from the heart in some way or another. Even in work, when people get anxious and bored, when people are doing something and it takes a lot of energy in the form of anxiety, because while they're working, they would rather not be. They would rather be on holiday or doing some other activity. You can say, my heart is not in my job. All your effort and energy, all your enthusiasm that comes from a feeling level is not compatible with what you're doing. But there are those people who will give a higher dimension to this feeling. And so that's another kind of yoga, which is to do with devotion. And he says there are no other means, anywhere. Of these, the path of knowledge is for those who have got disgusted with work. That is, knowing that it is fraught with problems and difficulties. But you see, most people today are in the category, and so they have to find a way to work and at the same time find some delight in it. That is called karma yoga. And so for those who have got disgusted with work in that sense and have renounced it, these are the jnani yogis. And for those who have not been disgusted with it, work, I like work, work is necessary, I have to earn money, I have to pay a mortgage, I have to go on holiday and get sunburned, all the kinds of things I have to do, all right? And so, being disgusted with it and desire its fruits, they have not been disgusted with it, they want the fruits, they want the effects, they want the money, they want the salary. I never actually met anybody, or very seldom anyway, who has gone to their boss in a workplace and say, I've got a suggestion, a proposal for you. I don't want a salary this month. Actually, the whole of the year, I'll work for free. So we can test it out. So here we have 4 people here. Well, of course, one is retired, so blessed are you, Jnana yogi, no doubt.
Certainly the teachers don't say it anyway.
Yes, so, yeah?
Teachers union.
So anybody prepared to work for no salary? No. I take it there are no takers. In which case, of course, their path is work. So for the majority of people, of course, karma yoga is the yoga practice. When a certain group started off, a study group here in Ireland, they were encouraged to study Swami Vivekananda's work, a number of chapters, of course, on karma yoga. And very convenient for us, Swami Vivekananda has delineated and expanded and explored these 4 subjects: karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raj yoga, jnana yoga, even published in separate texts. But then what about others? But for the people who somehow has got a veneration for tales about me, says him, and such other things, and who is neither disgusted with nor grossly attached to work, the path of devotion is successful. So what does that mean? Somehow entails all of those things. That is, this intermediate stage between these 2 things, this jnana yoga and this karma yoga, that would be suitable for most feeling people. And how do we, the next thing is, this is also put in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as the easiest technique, the easiest path. Anybody who has any emotion, anybody who gets angry, anybody who is moved by emotional scenes, let's say in a movie, or by a child's cry, or by music, or by singing, or by a person's sad tale, or moved to compassion by refugees and their sufferings, or those who have lost family, those in the process of bereavement, anybody who sheds tears in any way, whose heart is moved, and most people are like that. Nobody that I know has an absolute heart of stone. Some kind of movement will be there, even for family. You have love for family, love for your children, even pets, love for your dogs, love for your cats. Even despite the fact that cats don't reciprocate. Cats are receivers. Cats determine when they wish to be stroked and made a fuss of. Otherwise, they sit serenely aloof and they go about wandering in and out at their leisure and pleasure. What a wonderful life. Sleeping when they wish to sleep, eating when they wish to eat, going hunting at night, going on an adventure, returning in the morning. Nobody asked, where have you been? How late you've been? And we love those cats, and we love dogs, and we love all kinds of animals, and we love children. These are the things we mostly love because of their innocence. When one person's dog died recently, a devotee, I said, because they're associated with holy people, there's no doubt they will be born again as a human. Oh, what a pity, was the reply. We don't want humans have some kind of aberration in them where there's jealousy and fear and hatred and attack and insulting. Well, yes, if you listen to BBC and CNN and all these other things and OTE and so on, you'll catch all the bad news, no doubt. But 7 billion people on the planet, can they all be like that? Are there not some noble people? And even the worst amongst us, is there not this infinite possibility to climb the ladder of possibilities, yielding the full glory of your own nature, which is none other than the glory of the infinite, invisible, the divine, what religion calls the God himself or herself or itself. So, where do we start with? Mythologies. That is what Krishna mentions. Tales about me, not just mythologies, but stories. How do we enable love for an entity which is invisible to us? Yesterday, one very smart child said, how can I, relate to God or pray to God when I cannot see that God? Now, the easiest thing we can say is, I took him to the window and I said, look up. It happened to be a blue sky, an unusual event in Ireland. And I said, so, can you see there? And I was using Ramakrishna's example. Can you see the stars? No, I can't see the stars. Does it mean the stars do not exist? No, the stars exist. You know it for a fact? Yes, they tell me so. I see. The fact that you cannot see something does not mean it does not exist. But at night you see them. And can we see this thing, this entity, this personal dimension, as it were, this highest reading of the absolute to the human mind, as Swami Vivekananda describes it, that we call God or Ishvara? Yes, we can. How do we know this? Because all mystics who've gone on this path of devotion have seen. And this itself is a conversation between Uddhava and Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the conversation is between Arjuna and Krishna. And Krishna is fully registered as that divine. And this divinity comes out in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as the cosmic vision, where not only formally a friend, Krishna was a friend. We would joke with him, laugh with him, cajole him, not take much notice of him, but still revere him, admire his wisdom, still seeing that divinity, that specialness there, but to see the full glory of it, something very different. So can we see? Yes. Can we have a vision of this? Yes. Have you seen God, sir? This was Naran's question to the masters, Ramakrishna. Having asked everybody else and having a skeptical temperament and wanting to know if there's such an existent thing called God, he must be, or she, or it must be seen, must be felt. Nobody could say, yes, I have seen, I have felt. But Ramakrishna said, oh yes, not only have I seen, I'm seeing him now clearer than I see you sitting there. And you also can see him. This possibility lies within everyone. And for the devotee, the prayer is, may I have a vision of this. How do we get this vision? How do we get a vision of everything, anything, through the visual sense of the eye? Well, closing the eye, we can't do it. And most of us have closed eyes. What does it mean? It means that our vision can expand. It means we have to open up a vision. And in the path of devotion, we open up the most revealing thing which is there, the heart itself. This is not a new idea. In all the Upanishads, the meditation instruction or recommendation or guidance is referring to the cave of the heart. Cave is dark by its own nature. But when we see the inner essence of it, we see that it is lit from within and that its essence is shining light of the size of a thumb. This Atman is, says the Upanishads. Or does it mean that this entity is limited, has some limited spatial dimension? Is it very, very small? We thought that it was as big as and bigger than the cosmos. We thought that wherever you went, no matter how far you go, that would go ahead of it, says the Isha Upanishad. Without moving, it moves. That kind of impression, this kind of almost contradiction. In other words, beyond the scope of our thought. We can't put this in a box called a cave of a heart and say it is there exclusively. And then, of course, my favorite passage is there from the Katha Upanishad, referring to, see, the 11-gated city. Ekadasha Dwaram, 11-gated city, the human body. A beautiful idea. And all of these ideas in the Upanishads are meditative ideas. We can take up any theme and explore them in a meditative way and get to the heart, as it were, of the truth. Just talking about it won't do. So the Upanishads lay out a principle, and then they lay out a practice, and then they lay out a meditation. So we begin by understanding the closeness of this entity, taking it from far away and putting it near us. If you cannot see this entity, don't give up. How can we love an entity we cannot see, we cannot visualize? We have a vision or prospect of a vision of this entity in the future, but not now. How can we relate to it? We simply have to understand what the body is doing, what this 11-gated city is doing, and how the indweller, who is unborn and whose consciousness is unflickering, is the phrase. We would have to understand what is its effects here and now. Your breathing, it is that which enables breathing. It is the it is the inner entity. It is the inner controller. That's the phrase that it is used. The inner controller. And the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad tells it many, many times with many, many examples. Again, not just describing a principle, but giving us a practice, a meditation practice. That which enables speech, that which is enabling hearing. The Kena Upanishad tells us the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, ultimately. The fact that we're able to think. So what's in the way? Oh, the mistake of claiming it. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No, you're not doing anything. But God is generous enough to say, never mind, my child, you claim it for yourself. You know, for income tax purposes, you put it down as your revenue. But actually, I'm doing it. I am the one who's pumping your heart. And in another example, I told somebody, an adult this time, so find your pulse. He looked for a while. I got a little worried. Then he found the pulse. I was most relieved. Good. Undertakers are quite expensive. So he felt his pulse. Okay, what's causing the pulse? Now, many people studying physiology will know, oh, it's the heart that's pumping. Peristaltic pump, it pumps, it stops. Approximately, 1 time per second. Never goes on strike, doesn't go on holiday, doesn't turn around and say, I'm sorry, I've been pumping now for 72 years. So I'm going to the Bahamas. Good luck. continues pumping it. What love is this? What a lover. Anybody who tunes into that will immediately and spontaneously be a lover. There'll be an intimate connectedness. I cannot see you, but I can feel your love in me as the pulse, as the heart pumping, as the food being digested, as the capacity to think, as the presenter of thought that I maneuver and manufacture and manipulate into hateful thoughts. You, out of love, give me this flow, this current. Me, out of negligence and ignorance, misuse it and hurl abuse on my neighbor and hurl rockets and missiles on whole cities. So how do we correct all the society difficulties that we are complaining about? It is love. But what is love? Now, human love gives us a clue. But it also tells us what real unconditional love is not. Because most human love is love of yourself. It's all selfishness. I love you if you love me, as I tell you many times, you see. When we start arguing and you declare that, no, I love myself more, then the other party says, no, I love myself more. It's a hidden message. It's not normally spoken. But that's really what it's about. When a flow of love comes to me, then I'll reciprocate. But if it's not coming to me, then divorce. 54% of people who get married in the United States get divorced. So the statistics go. Well, why is that? When Sister Nivedita went through the words of the Christian marriage ceremony to the Sharda Devi, the Holy Mother was moved and delighted. What were the words that moved her? See? For better or worse. That means I love you, even if you have bags under your eyes and the hair turns gray and a pot belly develops and all of this, and you get cancer and all that, and sickness and health. Whether you're sick, see, in the courting phase, you don't see it. In the courting phase, lots of paint is applied and you're on your best behavior. And I think the old Irish system, you'd go in a cart or something, back to back, I don't know, and you'd have a chaperone there, and he would control and say, oh, too close, that kind of thing. So the courting phase, wonderful. Nature inserts that. And it's chemicals that go along with it. But sooner or later, nature says, okay, enough of that. We now have to develop family life. We have to make a social arrangement for this to be sustained. But if you're trying to get the initial thing, it's not going to work. It has to deepen and mature. Now, there are various attitudes of love in spiritual life, in devotional practice, in bhakti yoga. And we can choose any one we like. Or we can choose all of them, and Ramakrishna chose all of them. The idea of practicing a presence, an amorphous kind of presence, which is always a presence, which is always near, which is always calming, which is always peaceful. Or because we love children so much, because they're innocent, and they allow us to do everything for them, then we can think of this particular highest representation of the Absolute called God as a child. Bala Krishna or Bala Rama or Christ in the cradle at Christmas, or any of these attitudes, we can do that. Your own children, if you love your own children most. One devotee went to Ramakrishna, oh, I can't develop this spiritual practice, love of God. And he asked, well, is there somebody in your family you love most? And I think in the story it was a nephew or a niece or something like that. In some cases it might have been an animal. Well, think of God as an animal. Think of God as your cat or your dog, maybe. In other words, make things easy for yourself. Let there be a natural flow of love that happens. Let us take what we have. We have love. Where does this love come from? It comes from our own inner nature. There's every reason why every religion declares God is love. But what kind of love? So I'll remind you of what I have said previously, not what I've said, what Swami Vivekananda defines as this love, as a triangular kind of construct with three criteria: no fear, no rival, no reward. You apply that in any relationship, then you have pure love. And when we catch some of the Holy Mother's words, last words actually, we put it in a poetic form, don't accuse, don't demand, don't complain. Make the whole world your own. Now imagine that, make your whole world your own. Buddhists have a form of meditation that does that. It starts off with thinking and imagining. Imagination plays a large part in devotion. Imagining that there is this expansive love of compassion or compassion that goes out to everyone everywhere. And a whole meditation is done like this. What is the basis for that? The basis for no fear, no rival, no reward is the idea that love is an infinite thing, creating infinite bliss for all of us. It is out of love, really, that this whole machine works and operates. It is a kind of loving investment that you are alive. You say, well, what has God ever done for me? See? Well, you see, that's an atheistic position. I don't believe in God, What has God done except make a cruel and punishing world? No. The fact that you're able to state it, the fact that you're able to think it, the fact that you're able to analyze, that is the evidence of this inner controller. And so children are told many stories which are there to develop this love. And so storytelling is an important component. And if you have some human representative of God, what it means is, in this case is Krishna, an avatar, somebody who's descending and coming amongst us in order to teach us by example, mainly, by sharing that divine light with us everywhere, having a transforming effect for thousands of years. That entity we can easily relate to. Whether it is historical or non-historical, we can easily relate to at least that which is historical. And so, as I've told you many times in dealing with meditation, we can imagine, for example, sitting, if you're a Christian, say, sitting in presence around the fire, and Jesus is there telling us many, many parables and stories, giving us spiritual insight. And we have the delight of cooking food for him and eating the fish that we caught that day, never mind about vegetarianism, and walking with him and steering him away from the crowds unnecessarily when he wants to go to the mountain to pray. Being with him in every moment, understanding what his face and eyes looked like when he spoke about his Father in heaven or the kingdom of heaven within. Or visualizing a Krishna, as in this case, talking and walking with his disciple Uddhava. And how does Uddhava see him with his flowing hair, with his diadem on the chest, with his peacock feather, with his lotus eyes, with his blue skin, with his beautiful form and face, with his heroic form, with his loving look. See, all of these we can visualize. And when we listen to all the events and stories, we can construct these as a kind of mental adventure until we realize the glory of what is there. And all of it is a path of love. One should perform work until one has got disgusted with it, or until one has developed a veneration for listening to tales about me and that kind of thing. Until you've developed this love of God and that kind of thing, this veneration, this appreciation, this deep love, then carry on with working. Is it possible to work and love at the same time? Yes, but the love, if the work is associated with so-called normal rewards, any kind of motivation is there, then the love for God becomes diluted in the sense that practicing the presence of the divine. A beginning book for any devotee, whether regardless of their religion or spiritual background, would be Brother Lawrence, Practicing the Presence. It's a small book. We have to feel the divine presence within us. When we go to work, we take that with. Some people, when they drive in a car, will have a special seat. The divine is sitting there with me. And is that divine not inside everything, inside every member of your family? For the husband, is it not inside the wife? Is it not inside the children? Is it not inside the father? Is it not inside the husband? In a conversation in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya tells his dear wife the whole conversation, not for the sake, and it goes on in a number of examples, not for the sake of the husband is the husband, dear, but for the sake of the inner Atman, the inner self, that Brahman that stands within. So it goes on with all these examples. We start up a process, therefore, of trying to see and feel that divine in everything, in everyone. That's our starting point. Until we get some kind of uplift and familiarity with it, it becomes a natural process wherever we look, wherever the eyes are light on, whatever sound we hear, whatever sensation we experience, we can put the divine inside it. Or we can see all these various manifested adapters, if you like, with a solid, beautiful flowing current, divine current, infinite current flowing through. In which case we'll see that divine presence through all hands and all eyes and all heads, through all limbs, through the sun, through the moon, through the air, through the trees, through everything flowing through. Then we have elevated this inward-looking perspective, seeing that divinity in all beings to through all beings, until a realization dawns as all beings, there's no difference, and then beyond. Now we have gotten to a natural state through Bhakti Yoga of jnana, true knowledge. And the knowing one inevitably will have to mobilize the heart, because three dimensions are there in the human. Physiologically, we can say the navel, where your life came from. And in this 11-gated sati, this will be one gate. And then another will be the heart area in the chest. And another, you might say here, in between the eyebrows. This is the yogic language for expressing it. The cosmic mind is represented as the Adnan Chakra. And these are seen to be knots, or seen to be interchanging vortexes of energy, if you like. So this is the yogic concept and yogic language for it. And therefore the yogi has a 12-petal lotus as a heart. That's how you view it. And each of these chakras will be associated with subtle elements, mahabhutas or tanmatas. Subtle elements, ranging from Prithivi, the earth, and going up to Agasha in Vishuddha Chakra, and then going beyond to cosmic mind and nature, that is, that first manifested becoming of pure being, and ultimately pure being. That's the process. You can describe it like a mountain. You can describe it like Mount Meru. Meru Danda is sometimes called by the yogis, in culminating in a total realization as a natural unfolding But the beginning of the process, the real beginning of the process is the heart. That's the real beginning of the process, where you don't want to converse with anything else or any other subject except the divine. Any other noise becomes jarring on one, where you delight in songs, where you delight in thinking of this deity in any of these different bhavas or moods. We mentioned that of adult toward a child. But then you can be yourself a child. And there, that divine becomes the mother or the father or the master. And then the sweetest, so such a sweetness would be as a friend, as a companion on your way. And ultimately, the sweetest of all, and yet one of the most difficult to practice, will be the lover and beloved, like Krishna and Radha, or like Shiva and Sati, or Shiva and Uma eventually, and so on. That intimate relationship where the two become one. And this is such a sweet, sweet love. Difficult for many to practice and not recommended unless you put yourself as a woman, is the safest way. And then that being is your divine lover. And this appears in Christian mysticism. This appears in Sufi mysticism. This appears in Hindu mysticism, in Vaishnavism, Shaivism also, some aspects of that. In all of these things, it is a wonderful stage. And that starts off as love and then comes up as prema, ecstatic love, and a natural unfolding. So sweet. And yet, what discipline is required to do this? Well, is love really a discipline, or is it an expression? Is there something you have to do? I asked somebody, what is your spiritual practice? Oh, I do this and that and the other. Laboriously do it, all disciplined, all tapasya-like, and so on and so forth, but all from the head, nothing from the heart. The heart has to open and expand, because the heart can represent the ego. And when it is closed, I become selfish. The only love I have is preserved for myself. And I have to learn to open it up completely and be generous, as a flower is generous. And then, other than the 12-petal lotus that is envisaged by the yogis as anahata, other than that, there is the conventional center of meditation, the seat of consciousness itself. That is the other lotus within the representing the core of one being, visualized as, again, an opening lotus. Why lotus? Lotus represents purity. It stands above the water. It is beautiful. It responds to the sun. It opens up. And see how flowers are much more generous than mankind, mostly. They're happy to spread their fragrance everywhere. And they are able to take the raw material, all the compost, all the nasty smelling stuff, and transform it into something beautiful. There's no insistence on behalf of the compost to say, wait, flower, here's my instruction, I'm your guru, you have to smell like me. The flower say, with all due respect, Guruji, my scent is, I prefer my scent. And others seem to like it too. They seem to come and enjoy my scent, and I spread it everywhere. And I'm generous enough to make my scent a landing strip for bees to come on and spread the pollen everywhere. And how beautiful I display for all the eyes to see. I don't charge any entrance fee. Anybody can see it in any season. And I can grow miraculously. I have the knowledge to know how to draw up the sap, the nourishment through there, how to display my leaves, my small buds, my leaves, the flowers, how to be of such varied color that there's no boredom. Everybody sees a different color. I'm happy to share myself with everybody. So should we not take this ego and make it an open channel for divine grace to flow everywhere? That's the culmination, not samadhi. The final culmination is to share this love everywhere, to be a beacon, shining example of love. And that is how we teach children, purely by example, by your own loving, generous nature. It is a natural thing within us, but it comes out normally as genetic love, which is squandering. Any animal can have genetic love. Any animal can love its own. That's easy. It's easy to love your own children. You know, I heard a conversation at a school, and they were taking their children there for the first time, or maybe some children have been there a few years. And one mother said, "Oh, what year is your child in?" And the other person wondered, he says, "Well, 2022, of course. What year is your child in?" Well, we think in these terms, but can we bring ourselves to this present moment? This present moment is 2022, by the way. So take note of it. So when we go beyond a bargaining kind of love, what do we have? Swami Vivekananda gives a chapter in Bhakti Yoga. The God of love is his own proof. What is the ideal of the lover who has quite passed beyond the idea of selfishness, of bartering and bargaining, and who knows no fear? See how he brings out these criteria. No reward, no rival, no fear. Even to the great gods, such a man will say, "I will give you my all, and I do not want anything from you. Indeed, there is nothing I can call my own." If you ask anybody, so-called average person, so what are your assets? Of course, he might say, "I'm good looking." That's an asset. No, I mean, oh, I have a house, I have a mortgage, I have the bank, I have this, I have that. I have a property there, I invest in a property somewhere. I have stocks, I have shares. See what a narrow world we operate in. And a knowing person will say, yes. How many shares will you take with you to your grave? How much gold will you accumulate? The pharaohs had that idea. They built me a beautiful structure, a pyramid, nicely geometrically constructed, using, must have been thousands and thousands of laborers, all paid. They weren't slaves, by the way. There's no evidence of that. And still a mystery, still a matter of speculation. How do these great structures get constructed? And what is the purpose? Well, in the middle of it, a pharaoh sits ready for the afterlife. And all the things he had, he wants to take with him, even dogs or cats, mummified, to take him on the journey to the afterlife. But I have to tell you, it's not going to happen. And archaeologists years later will still find the cats mummified and still find the gold. It never went anywhere. So there's nothing really we can call our own. We say, "I breathe." Please readjust it. Please revalue it. Please register it to a proper owner. Some entity, some internal controller, out of love for you, invests something in you called breath and moves the diaphragm muscle up and down for you. You don't have to do it yourself. When a man has acquired this conviction, he says, his ideal becomes one of perfect love, one of perfect fearlessness born of love. The highest ideal of such a person has no narrowness of peculiarity about it. It is love universal. It is not narrow, not genetic. Without limits and bonds, love itself, absolute love. Is it out of love that some are causing suffering to others? Is that love? Is it love in a domestic environment when we quarrel, when we fight, when we isolate? Is it love when we say, no, I'm providing a living for you, I don't have to do anything more? No, love is a feeling thing. It's a genuine appreciation and understanding of the divinity within the other. This grand ideal, says Vivekananda, of the religion of love is worshipped and loved absolutely as such, without the aid of any symbols or suggestions. These symbols or suggestions are a good starting point to suggest something to us. But the love ultimately is like a flood, it takes over completely. This is the higher form of parabhakti, the worship of such an all-comprehending ideal as the ideal. All the other forms of bhakti are only stages on the way to reach it. What are these more specifically? Well, there's kirtan, there's bhajan, there are hymns that we can sing, there's poetry, there's painting, there's art, there's culture, there's dancing, there's prayer, there's repetition of stotras and stanzas. But all of these can, of course, be devoid of any vestige of feeling. It can be just ticking a box and doing your duty. If you attend any Hindu wedding, you'll see that any guest is not really interested in the procedure. The procedure is happening somewhere. And even the Brahmins might not be that interested, only in the fee. I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying I have observed it, not just in there, but every religion has this. The Upanishads were revolutionary texts, revolutionary movements actually, teachings against this form of Brahmanic ritualism. Many of the teachings taught by the Kshatriya caste in palaces as well as forests. So what is this true bhakti? It is putting aside this ritualism. You offer me a flower, some water, a leaf, says Krishna. You are my dearest devotee. Where's the puja in this? I'm not relegating puja to second-class activity, no. Puja is a whole expression, a meditative expression, how beautifully it's done, if it is done with thought and meaning. If it is done meditatively, oh, I can't meditate. All right, do puja, do some activity with your hand, but put your heart into it. Slow it down. I think I mentioned in one of the talks where there's a great revered saint. I don't know what talk I mentioned it. I recall mentioning it on maybe a Saturday talk. How a great saint revered by Roman Catholics in this country, Padre Pio, and how his church service, his mass, took 2-3 hours at a time. But I've experienced some people saying, oh, you need to go to this church because you'll be out in 10 minutes. Then you can go and watch soccer. So all our failures and all our successes in following the religion of love are on the road to the realization of that one ideal. Object after object is taken up, and the inner ideal is successfully projected on them all. And all such external objects are found inadequate as expressions of the ever-expanding inner ideal and are naturally rejected one after the other. You can take a symbol, you can take an image. The idea of an image, for example, in Hinduism, of pratima and pratika, symbols and images, will be that it becomes a living entity. And when you feel the living entity there, it goes from reverence, dutiful reverence, to deep feeling of being looked at with love and reciprocating with love, until these two loves merge in a higher dimension of this parabhakti and transcends all of these images and all of the symbols and becomes a reality of unity. At last, the aspirant begins to think that it is vain to try to realize the ideal in external objects, that all external objects are as nothing when compared to the ideal itself. And in the course of time, he acquires the power of realizing the highest and most generalized abstract ideal, Why generalized? Because it is the most universal, the most subtle, the most truthful. It is the reality itself, not a symbol of it, not an aspect of it, not a part of it. It is pure being itself. And so abstract ideal entirely as an abstraction that is to him quite alive and real. When the devotee has reached this point, he is no longer impelled to ask whether God can be demonstrated or not. It goes beyond atheism or agnosticism, whether he is omnipotent and omniscient or not, whether he belongs to this theology or that theology. To him, he is only the God of love. He is the highest ideal of love, and that is sufficient for all his purposes. He as love is self-evident. That's the point. You can't say, find me evidence, self-evident. Otherwise, your heart doesn't pump. Otherwise, speech doesn't happen. Otherwise, thought doesn't occur. Otherwise, leg, hand movement doesn't happen. Food digestion does not occur. It requires no proofs to demonstrate the existence of the beloved to the lover. The magistrate gods of other forms of religions may require a good deal of proof to prove them. But the bhakta does not and cannot think of such gods at all. To him, God exists entirely as love. None, O beloved, loves the husband for the husband's sake. He's quoting the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad there in the conversation of Maitreya and Yajnavalkya. It is for the sake of the self who is in the husband that the husband is loved. None, O beloved, loves the wife for the wife's sake. It is for the sake of the self who is in the wife that the wife is loved. It's a wonderful formula for human relationships to say, let me see and feel that God within. And then this domestic love becomes a love of spiritual life. Do we have some examples of that? Yes. In the early married life that is the adult married life of Ramakrishna, he very quickly takes his 18-year-old bride, his wife, and worships her literally at the Shudashi Puja. And there the two elevate their spirits. The spiritual unity happens. And from there on, he sees her only as the mother goddess. No difference between her and Kali. And she, on the other hand, only sees him as the divinity, straining from the Nahabad music, housing, tiny housing that she lived in and cooked in and entertained in. And from that, bending over through the reeds that she had, trying to catch every word from the master's room and every glimpse precious to her. So this union of souls is the highest union that any human being can have, this parabhakti, which is there, this great, great opening of the heart. I just see now, there's a question in text. What means the God of love is his own proof? I don't understand. You see, if you're love for love's sake, you see, most of our love requires some evidence. That's the point. Show me that you love me. See, on Valentine's Day, everybody, all the husbands bring chocolates, and I don't know what the wives do. Who knows? Cards and what have you, with hearts. Flower shops make a great fortune for this. Now, but I know at least one person who told me, oh yes, this February date, I don't give the wife anything special because every day I bring her flowers. Every day is Valentine's Day for me. Now, supposing he stopped that automatically and said, I'm going to cut off this business because we're on a budget. I can no longer afford this. Oh, something is wrong in my marriage. Let's go to a counselor. See the attitude. So there has to be evidence in these kinds of inferior kinds of love. But this supreme love doesn't require any evidence, because what is supreme investor? What is supreme lover? Digesting your food, pumping your heart, not asking for wages, not demonstrating, not going on strike, all the time continuing, sorting out all your problems in dreams, waking up in the morning for stupid thinking, all of this, and not a word of thanks, not a murmur, hey, come on, you never thanked me today. Try that in human love, you'll be in trouble. I sent this person Christmas card, they never sent me back. They're off my Christmas list. I'll never send them a card again. Imagine. And allowing you to take credit for all that. What a supreme lover. All right, so I think we've gone 2 minutes past our time now, so we'll leave it at that. And for those who come here, while I'll be away or broadcasting next Tuesday, the talks will continue as normally planned. Next week, this week is an exception. I should mention that there is a workshop from a very prominent neurophysiologist who's coming as our guest speaker, giving a small talk on Saturday evening, and a whole workshop from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Those attending, please bring and share lunch. It should be the arrangement for food, and register so we know how many people are coming. And let us try and make this a great success, because it's a wonderful workshop on mind-body balance, that kind of thing. It's a very relevant subject to the world today. The advert is there on your information, on the WhatsApp group, probably on the website also, and many other places. So I would encourage you to support this unique event, and not just for the sake of supporting it, but because you'll get huge value from it, practical value. So thank you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.